giving on this planet is to generate resources that they can plow back into kingdom building work. You have some people that they have multiple projects that they're engaged in, and they have multiple things they're involved in. I remember meeting a guy in Alabama once. He said, well, he's a developer, and he was older. He said, I've tried to retire 4 or 5 times and God won't let me. He said, every time I try to retire, there's a new project. Now I got to go make some more money so I can fund that project. He was literally giving away. He and his wife were set, so they had the money they needed from their retirement, but he was literally making money in development projects so he could plow 100% of the net back into ministry. There are people out there like that. That's how you're looking. That's who you're looking for. Candidly, out of a caseload of 100 people, you're going to find 5 to 10 that are like that. And those 5 to 10, talk about 1% that give 80% of the revenue. Those are the ones you're looking for. But you got to work with 100 to find those 5 to 10, and that's the way this thing works. Tracking giving benchmarks. It's really important you look at your donors giving to your organization. People ask me, well, what's the secret, Roy? How do you identify the right people to try and meet with? Well, I wish I could say that there was a scientific or mathematical formula. There's really not. We do the best we can to help our clients. You're overlaying wealth with giving history. And it's very subjective, donor to donor. We literally will rank and score. We start out and we'll rank and score every donor on the file, and then based upon what we know, knowledge, where their history is, what they're doing. Oh, you go to the front of the class. We met with you last year and you really didn't have the passion. You go to the back of the class. And we'll rank and score. And so people are always surprised. You say, well, Roy, if you were going to meet with a donor that gave us $25,000 2 years ago, they're very wealthy, or if you were going to meet with a donor that gave us, over the last 10 years, 137 gifts, and the average gift was $1,000. Which one would you try to meet with first? 137 gifts. The more times a donor is given to you, the more philanthropic intent they have. There's something weird, there's something psychological about every time they write a check, every time they donate online, every time they give, they get more committed to you. And so if you want to increase your number of meetings, call on the people that have made the most number of gifts first that have capacity. And so it's really important that you focus on that. Look at the timing of when they give. You're going to be freaked out. We mail them every month. We email them every month. The average nonprofit in America does 18 appeals a year. So you're putting appeals in front of them year round. You're going to be freaked out. These certain donors give the same time every year, 3 to 4 week window. It's a strange thing, and they don't even think about it. Sometimes it just has to do when they're the tax year. Sometimes it has to do when their profits come in from their business. But they're usually in a rhythm, and so taking the time to look at their rhythm. The other thing that's really important, is understanding the bigger the gift, the sooner you have to do that in the calendar year. So if you're looking at somebody for a 6-figure prospect, you've got to meet with them in the beginning of the year. You can't wait till October to book that meeting. The bigger the gift, the more likely it is they give from assets or moving assets around to free up cash, and it takes time to do that. 7-figure gift, 6-figure gift, candidly, $50,000 gift. They're going to have to reposition assets. Even they're usually at that level. It's a gift of stock. In most cases, it can be a gift of real estate. It can be cash. But in most cases, they're repositioning assets and when their disbursements are. So they need more time to plan. So it's just like a capital campaign. You want to meet with your biggest donors first because it cascades down. And so your bigger donors, those meetings got it. You try and make those happen the best you can before spring and summer. And then as you move into fall, most of your gifts are going to be between that $10,000 to $25,000 range. Because again, the average millionaire, people are always surprised at this, and this is from Forbes magazine. The average millionaire keeps less than $10,000 in their checking account. Think about that for a minute. And so if you're wanting a big gift and you're asking for cash, this relates to events. I'm going to talk about events tomorrow. You make a mistake asking a millionaire for cash. You've got to move to asset giving. So it's really, really, really important. There is no easy button. I wish there was. I wish I could give you the secret email to send people that they'll just send back cash. There's not. It is about cultivating relationships. It takes time. It takes, a lot of people. These donors, part of what you're doing is you're training donors. And it's really, really important that you understand that. And so again, that in that first meeting, that first conversation, even the first conversation on the phone, I will say to them, Mrs. Smith, I want you to know I'm not coming to twist your arm and ask for money. We don't meet with all of our donors. It's impossible. We have thousands of donors. But our board has asked me to reach out to our top 100 or top 200, whatever the number is. Again, I'll do the research on every single donor, and I've ranked and scored every one of them, and I'll tell them, do you know where you are? No. You're number 8. You know how many times you've given to this ministry? No. 137 times. Thank you. You know how much you've given in the last several years? No. $73,000. You're one of our top donors. We can't meet with everyone, but my board has told me I need to meet with you. And I want to find out about your passion. I want to know what God's doing in your life. I want to see how I can help you. I want to identify projects that God's burdened your heart for. You can't do that with everybody. I want you to know we want to do it for you. When people understand why you're coming, they're more likely to take the meeting. And so, again, there's lots of tricks that I could show you. There's lots of tips I could show you. It is a little bit of salesmanship, getting in the door and getting them to take that first conversation. But once it happens, you're training them. And guess what? Year 2, getting the meetings easier. They know why you're coming. Year 3, if it is September and it's a bigger donor and you haven't called them yet, guess what? They're calling you. Roy, it's September, man. We gotta talk about what I'm doing here at year end. And it gets much easier. I'll never forget, and I won't say her full name, I'll just say Amy. But I was at Mercy Ships, and I met this lady, and she worked on the West Coast, and she had a caseload of about 150 donors, and I had laid it out there. We're going to make sure everybody on this team are going to be $1 million producers. And she said, Roy, I know this caseload. I've met with them. I've talked to them. I know what their capacity is. But she said, this caseload's never going to give more than $500,000. It won't happen. I said, trust me. Trust me. And within a year and a half, she had a caseload that did 1.5. We just went in and did some training again for Mercy Ships. Of course, a good consultant always gets his former employer as a client. And she did $5.6 million last year. Never give more than $500,000. And again, they're calling Amy. Her job is fun now. She's not having to make those cold calls like she used to in the old days. But it's really important. Weekly activity reports. You need to create something, and I call them war reports. I got this. I didn't make this up. And I have some clients. I work with Souls Harbor in Canada, and they don't like these military acronyms up there. So we've changed it to the scoreboard because they like baseball up there. And so but weekly activity reports. It's really important. Some people do this from their database. Okay. A couple things about database, and again, I don't know what CRM you're using, whether it's Virtuous or or Bloomerang or Donor Perfect, whatever database you're using, you're going to have to change it a little. Because and it's because data wonks don't understand your job of meeting with donors. So they'll just put phone call. Well, does that mean a voicemail that you left or a call back from the donor? And again, I think it's important you track both. And so you're going to have outbound and inbound. Because what we're really tracking and what you have to track in your weekly activity reports is what we call meaningful contacts. Meaningful contacts. When a donor communicates with you. Now the communication may be, Roy, please stop calling me. That counts, okay? That's a meaningful contact. But that's what we're tracking. How many people every week did you talk to? How many people emailed you back, called you back, or texted you back? And you got to do all four. Integration is the key to getting a call back. People have to realize the way to get you to stop calling is to call you back. And you're training your donors. And so weekly activity reports. Again, some people do it in their database. Here I was working with a Union Mission in Kansas City. They were in a very unique position, and I've got permission to tell this story. But a CEO fired the chief development officer. Then one by one, the 6 people on that development team left, resigned. Giving went down. So then the board and the CEO have a conversation, the CEO leaves. So they're without a development director. They're without a CEO. The board chairman calls me and says, can you help? I said, I don't know. I don't know. His name is Mark Seawalson. I don't know Mark, but I'll try. I said, I called him back the next day and I said, here's what the Lord laid on my heart. I need all hands on deck. He said, what do you mean? I said, I need every board member to commit every Friday to meeting with me, taking some donor assignments. I need every program manager, and they had 6 of them, whether it was women's, children, men, all the different programs. I said, I need them to commit 2 hours a week to helping us make donor calls. And we're going to take your top donor file after I do the analytics, and we're going to break it up among the whole team. And we're going to reach out, going to ask people to come take a tour and see us again, and say thank you, and talk to people. And they were down $2 million from the year before. So, and so this was in August last year. So by September, these meetings were happening every week. Weekly activity reports, that's what you see here. Boom, 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 boom. And between September 1st and December 31st, they did more than 150 donor tours or meetings as a team. They ended up raising an additional $2 million by just loving on people and doing the right thing. And of course, in the meantime, they've hired a CEO, they got the development stuff all together. But in 6 months, weekly activity reports, meeting every week, staying focused on getting in front of the right people, you can make a measurable difference. You know, you want to do what works for you. It could be an external spreadsheet. It could be in your database. There is a process. This is industry best practice. Industry best practice. And so, you know, you've got to identify your top prospects. We're going to rank and score them. You're going to prioritize them. You're going to create offers. You're going to take your budget. And trust me, your finance director is going to hate this because there's nothing about accounting that this process is. Because we're going to chunk out each of your programs. You're going to overlay overhead. And then you're going to assign dollar values. And it's about funding your operational budget. You say, is that a restricted gift? No. It's a designated gift to the general fund. Very different. Very different. And that's the fight you're going to have. But bigger donors want to have project discussions. And don't get me wrong, your best donors, your absolute best donors, say, Roy, I gave you $10,000 last year. You asked me for 25 this year. I'll give you 15. I'll take it. Use it. I trust you. I love you guys. Use it where you need it most. Those are your best donors. And so I'm not saying you use this approach with every single donor. But for win-backs and upgrades, you usually got to have a project to talk about. And you want to fund your operational budget first. It's really important. And that's where it breaks down. That's where some people say, oh, we can't do this. You know, we just got to ask people to send us money for the general fund. You can do that, but giving, it's really tough to upgrade people that way. You want to take your general fund and chunk it out like a donor thinks about your programs. Get the meeting. This does, again, don't get me wrong, and I ran down this rabbit trail and didn't jump out of the hole a minute ago. How we communicate with major donors is different. I talked about all the full color and all the things that regular donors like. Major donors, guess what? You're going to spend more money making it look ugly. Instead of 4-color process, you're going to go to 9x12, hand addressed. You're going to take the time, 200 names, 500 names, very manageable number. The appeal may be the same, but you're going to shift to an open ask instead of doing the suggested ask. You're going to do handwritten PSs. You're going to do the type of communication you do looks like it came from the CEO's DeskJet printer. It's very different than what you normally do in direct response. And so you've got to integrate both of them. The other thing that I do, especially if you've got a fundraising team, I integrate them by name into the letter. It might be in the opening paragraph. Hey, I've asked Melinda to touch base with you. Her cell phone number is, you can email her here, but please return Melinda's call when she calls. I may make that an additional postscript. I don't do it every mailing. I might do it once a quarter. But you want to connect the dots for the donor that in fact CEO empowered that frontline fundraiser to be their advocate. And so you don't say you've been assigned, but you say I've asked so-and-so to talk to you. So again, how we communicate with major donors is really important. Getting the meeting. And again, being intentional about ministering that donor and being their advocate. I'm with a donor, and I've heard this, we got all these sales techniques, but I call this the Columbo close. Okay? Anybody? There's a few gray hairs. You know who I'm talking about, all right? And my brother,
I got gray.
no, you're going to have to go to YouTube and look up Columbo.
Okay, I will.
All right? So Columbo was this frumpy old detective. And he would always get, they catch the bad guy, he's interviewing him, cross-examining him, and he always asked these kind of crazy questions that were off track, and they get to almost the end of the interview, and the bad guy's thinking, I'm getting off. This guy is clueless. And then Columbo would go to the door and he'd say, oh, by the way, one more thing. And he asked that one more thing, and bam, that guy was going to jail. And so I call this the Columbo close, and I've been using it for a decade, and I've been teaching it, and I mean just last week, people tell me how it worked. But again, you had a sit down with a donor. You talked about their passion, their project. This is really a job interview for you, because you want to get to the end of this meeting, and you don't want to be the missions advocate anymore. Whose advocate do you want to be? The donor's advocate. And so they've told you about their passion, their heart, why they support you. What's the one thing you do that they're most excited about? And you're writing it down. Well, can I write this down? I always ask permission. And I'm listening to them. And thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all you do. You're headed to the door at, and I don't like to go to Starbucks, but sometimes it's the only choice you have. You head to the door at Starbucks, and I'll do it. I'll do the Columbo close. But now, by the way, you said your biggest passion was what we do helping women and children. Yeah. I want to go back and talk to our, now I could pull it out of the bag, I could, but I usually don't. I want to go back and I'll give you the exception. I want to go back and talk to our program manager and circle back with you with our biggest needs in that program right now. How's that sound? Do that for me? Yeah, I'd love to. And I can email it to you, we can follow up, have a conversation, or we can get together for another cup of coffee. Or if you'd like to come down and meet the program manager, that'd be even better. We could do that? Yeah. Guess what? You just got hired. You no longer work for the ministry, you're working for that donor. and their total perception about you has changed. You are now their advocate. And that's what you want to have happen. That's how you take a donor from $1,000 to $5, and from $5 to $25, and from $25 to $50, and from $50 to $100. If they've got the capacity, they're looking for an advocate that can help them identify the projects God's already laid on their heart. You know, here's just an example. These are all donors that I have met with before. Some of the pictures have changed, but the names are the actual people. And I asked them, you know, what do you think of this process of meeting with a frontline fundraiser? And in some cases, there are some, Richard Osborne, he's a retired CEO, he wants to meet with the CEO. And so he views that advocate's job as to get him peer-to-peer. There are other people, they'd rather have an advocate on staff. They're a little intimidated to meet with the CEO. But they like this advocate process. And I'm just telling you, it's a proven method. It makes a world of difference. Major gifts, 80% of the revenue is now coming from 1% of the file. And that 1% of the file, again, there's a place for direct mail. There's a place for email. But that 1% of the file is usually responding from a frontline fundraiser, reaching out, building a relationship, becoming their advocate, and then helping them with fun projects that they have a passion for. So it's really a proven process. You know, it's been tested. People keep waiting for it to change. It's not changing. Now, how we do it, and what we, and some of the tools that are becoming available. A lot of people are afraid of AI. I want to encourage you to test it. Some of the things that I've been doing with some of our clients, it's pretty mind-boggling. Now, a couple things. There's lots of tools out there. I'm a professor, as you know, at City Vision University. I teach grant writing. I teach major gift development. I teach nonprofit management. A couple things that we've discovered, and I say we at Fit Fundraising, not representing SVU, is that ChatGPT, it was the first one out there, but we're seeing that it's being used heavily. And I don't know anything about the ownership and funding by the porn industry. And so a lot of us in the Christian space are moving away from ChatGPT. We're seeing a lot of success with Claude. And if you haven't seen that, they're very inexpensive tools. I mean, $15, $20 a month. You'll be amazed at what you can do. And Google Gemini are two really good tools. But when you can meet with a donor, and again, I'm really careful about, even though they all say they're not open source, so that your information can't be grabbed by other people, they're closed source. I still don't trust them yet personally. So I don't like to put spreadsheets in of donor list, but I will give descriptions. And I will say, I just met with Susie Smith. She's given us $17,500 over the last 3 years. She's made 23 donations. I'm trying to upgrade her to the $50,000 level in the next 12 months. What are the next 5 steps I should take to cultivate the relationship after my meeting? You're going to be shocked. It's like having an assistant. They're going to output steps, dates, timelines, model scripts for follow-up communication. And again, you got to take it and put it in your own words. But I'm telling you, don't be afraid to use and test these tools. For donor cultivation, it just keeps you from just having to start from a blank piece of paper. But you also have Roy GBT. And so we've got, so download those samples. Last year, and my wife gets mad when I do this, but we helped more than 50 nonprofits with free fundraising counsel, and of course, 15 of them hired us. So don't make any bones about that. Because my hope and desire is to help you raise enough money where you can put it on retainer. But We do a lot of fundraising counsel. And again, don't feel like the meter's running. You can call us with anything, and we're happy to answer any questions. But with that, I'll just open this up. Any questions? I know I've been using up all the oxygen in the room here, so. Yes, sir.
Just real quick, in dealing with the major donors, what was it, in order to get that first gift, right? About how many times did you meet with that donor?
It usually happens in the second meeting. Again, now it depends on the donor, and I let me finish up another rabbit trail I didn't finish. Sometimes you're meeting with a type A personality, and you step in the room and she says, I've got 15 minutes, what do you need, how much do you need, you know I support what you do, just tell me what the biggest needs are now and what you need. And so in that case, that's when I do have those one-pagers ready. And I'm going to have looked at that donor in advance and say, well, Ms. Smith, last year you helped us with our Women and Children's program. You still interested in that? Yes. Last year you helped us with $10,000. Would you consider a gift of $25,000? Here's the one-pager on it. That's the exception when I will in the first-time meeting just get right to it. How often does that happen? Oh, I would say 1 out of 10 times. And again, especially if you're doing CEO cultivation, you're going to find some types like that. But in most cases, 90% of the time, it's about taking the time to get to know the donor, to minister to them, to listen to their heart, find out their passion, not tell them about yours, to find out about their passion, what other kinds of things that they do. You'd be shocked. I mean, I give people advice on other giving that they're doing other places. Oh, that's a good ministry. Yeah, I know somebody else that supports them. I'm not sure about that one. We should do some more research there. What are you thinking about with us? And they'll tell you. And what level were you thinking about? I know last year you helped us with $10,000. What are you thinking about this year? You do a little more? Okay. And they'll tell you. If you ask them, they will tell you. They're waiting for somebody to ask them, but you have to ask. But again, it usually happens. It's not. Sometimes it does take 3 meetings. It shouldn't take 4 or 5. You get to 4 or 5, by that time the donor's like, when is this guy going to ask me for something? It gets weird to them. At that, if you've done 4 or 5 meetings and you haven't made an ask, they're going to quit taking calls because they got other things to do. But it usually happens in the second conversation. Second meeting is where the money's made. Good question. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, could you break down a little bit more? So you'd mentioned all of the projects. That's what you give to your big donors. I completely understand that. But if I'm trying to raise the overall revenue, just for the, feeding, keeping the lights on, those things, how would you address that?
Well, even those,
yeah.
You can chunk them out
into quantities.
Into quantities.
Okay.
And so again, taking it to the number of clients served, right. And fund it by month.
Yes. Okay.
Fund it by week. Okay. Fund it by day.
Okay.
Again, I like to take the kitchen. Again, a lot of those costs are donated. It still has a value.
Yep. Absolutely.
And again, it could be equipment. It could be, there's going to be things. Taking the time, and this is where you really want to have a working relationship with the finance team, because a lot of times they budget these expenses.
Right.
Oh, well, I know that a freezer needs replaced. Okay, we're budgeting to do that when there's a little more cash flow in the fall, but if you know it's coming up, then you can work that into the mix. And again, it's going to be funded out of the general fund anyway.
Right.
So let them make a gift to the general fund that they can use to offset that cost. Again, maybe it's repainting, maybe it's air conditioning units that need replaced. All those things are going to be in their routine maintenance schedule coming out of the general fund. Well, knowing what's coming up, give the fundraising team a chance to get those things funded, because it's coming out of your general fund. But in most cases, taking your program cost, of course you got program salaries, and you got, but I encourage folks, don't just give the cost of the program. The staff, the curriculum. No, you've got there's overhead, there's rent, there's the utilities, there's, you know, again, you got to at least bake in 20% for fundraising. And so you're going to cost plus the overhead for that program. And if a donor asks, you tell them that.
Yeah.
And again, how often does a donor ask? Donors expect you to do that. I would say out of every 100 visits, I might have 2 that ask me to break it out for them. And then I go back and I sit down with the finance team and say, I hate to do this. We got to break this out.
Okay.
But it's very doable. And again, there's going to be a few, and I'm not kidding. It's only like 2 out of 100.
Okay.
And if you don't do 100 visits, I know some people have been doing visits for a couple of years. They haven't got to 100 visits yet, so they haven't run into that person. But it happens, and you just be prepared to break it out. Great questions. Again, I hope you'll call us. You know, the one thing that we added this year, you know, I was Chief Development Officer, Liberty University's first Chief Development Officer in 2005. That's when I went there. And my wife Melinda was working connected to the human resources in Liberty's Career Center. And then when I went to work at this big agency, Russ Reed, she then went to Azusa Pacific and worked in their Career Center. And so we're working with clients, and we have some clients over the last couple of years that increase revenue. They say, well, what do we do now? Well, you did 150 visits last year. You're not going to be able to do any more visits this year. Well, how do we increase revenue? Well, you got to hire staff. You got to scale. And what we found, it was very difficult for them to, you know, they were not hiring the right people. You know, they were hiring a good salesperson. And usually a salesperson, I'll be honest with you, and I'm one, so I can be critical of salespeople, is usually the worst fundraiser. I really have to work to be a good fundraiser, because your fundraisers are always the best listeners, not the best talkers. And so it's learning, and you know, the right people to hire, finding the right listeners, finding people that can ask the right questions and guide people down a journey. It really is a counseling role. It really is a ministry role. Those are your best fundraisers if you train them up right. And so it was teaching people to hire those kind of people, and it was hard. Some would hire a full-time recruiter that's just sorting resumes. They've never asked a person for a nickel in their life. And so Melinda said, maybe we should start helping people with placing. And so in the last year, we've placed 6 fundraisers for some of our clients. You know, we just hired the Chief Development Officer at Union Gospel Mission in Twin Cities. We also then hired a major gift officer at UGM Twin Cities. We hired the Director of Development at Bread of Life in Seattle. You know, we've hired C.S. Lewis Society, hired their Director of Development. International Christian Embassy Jerusalem hired their Director of Development. And so we're doing some of this because our clients needed it. So I throw that out there too. For staffing, it's really important. I like to tell people it takes one to know one. It takes a fundraiser to hire a good fundraiser. And so be aware. Again, I don't think you have to be a full-time professional fundraiser to raise money. But you've got to be somebody that understands and sees it as a ministry. And you know, some of the greatest fundraisers I know don't have fundraising or development officer in their title. You know, I mean, you know, they're CEOs and program managers, but they've learned how to minister to donors and present those needs. But well, thank you for the time. We're so honored, and please, you know, I hope you'll call us, and if we can help in any way, please let us know.